There's a certain lesson in graffiti that toys seem to overlook, and it takes them years to figure it out. And that's what I want to kind of show you and teach you about in today's video. And we're going to learn that lesson by checking out the work of Scare and breaking it down. As always, if you want to go ahead and follow his work, I got a link to him in the description down below, and be sure to go ahead and check him out. He's got incredible work. But without further ado, let's hop right into this with the very first piece here. Now, for those of you guys who are new to graffiti, let's go ahead and point out the letters. First of all, you got the S right here, followed up by the K. We shoot on over to the A right there, and then the R kind of fuses with it a little bit and shoots down this way and back over. And then you have a lowercase e right here. Now that we know where the letters are, we can kind of break this down a little bit more. And the very first thing I'll notice is he's got a 5-letter name. He's got 2 on the left side with another 2 here on the right side, and then the A right there in the center. And this works out really well for anybody with odd number names because you can use that center letter or the pairing of center letters in order to anchor down your piece, making it way more than everything else. And this is actually a great point to make, which we'll get into letter weight here in a second. And that's what he has going on here with the yellow A, really standing out with its red bold outline and its yellow fill-in, looking very different than all the other letters. But that's not the only thing that's different about the letter A. Not only is the letter A much higher up than the typical letters, but it's also much more simplistic than all the other letters. As to where normally in any art form, a high amount of detail attracts more attention because everything is detailed in this piece. So suddenly when you have the letter A that doesn't have a lot of detail, that becomes the focal point. That's what makes the letter A more of an anchor in this specific piece. But something else I want to note here is his use of letter uniformity and similarity in order to go ahead and increase flow. He's got the A here, which is pretty simplistic, and as a result it looks very different than all the other letters, but he still has to make this flow somehow. And he does this through 2 major ways: line uniformity and similarity and letter uniformity and similarity. Let's go over line uniformity and similarity real quick. So the very first thing we can see here is he has this really large slant to the A, which is also present in the extensions nearby, also present in the R's structure right there, and also present within the serif of the K. All of these little tiny things help tremendously in order to kind of make the A part of the family as far as the whole name is concerned. We then look at letter uniformity and similarity, and we can see he's got a very similar serif right here that the K has over on this side, and the R also has it over here, as well as the E. But to take things a step further, he's also got a very similar bottom to the A as the other letters as well. We can see that right here versus right here and right here, which that brings us to the next thing to note. We're gonna notice a bit of an artist habit with his work, where a lot of the times in his pieces he does this kind of bottom to the K and the R in order to help those letters flow. You'll oftentimes also see something resembling that in the S and even the A, although we don't see it in the A in this piece, you'll see it in the future. Like right here, for example. Not only do you have that kind of downward slope for the A, you got it for the K, you got it for the R, and you even have it for the serif of the K, and you have the downward angle on the S as well. Now the S is a little bit different than those other letters, but he's still following the line uniformity and similarity by going in that downward angle. Little side note, I really love this kind of E. It's actually an E that I find myself doing time and time again, and I have to like try and pull myself away from doing it because I love it so much. It's like my default E. That's a little bit of my own artist habit showing through when it comes to that specific letter. But another thing I really love about his work is he's able to tie different letters together by interior detail. That's another great way in order to make things flow with having letters that look very different from one another. This does require a higher kind of skill level to make it work though, because remember, your fundamentals have to be right before you delve into anything deeper than that. So if your fundamentals and your letters are busted to start with, then matching them with interior detail isn't going to fix anything. But we do see this kind of interior detail happen on the E, happen on the R, the K, and the S. So little things like that bring an extra sense of harmony to each individual letter and make it feel like a word as a whole. I also think something that he does really well is he's able to detail his letters without having all these crazy extensions. While sure, he may use extensions here and there, a lot of his detail is either implemented through the interior detail itself or through the actual fill-in itself. In this specific piece, we're not seeing him use the actual fill-in in order to detail the piece as much as he's using the interior details. And I think it ended up working out beautifully in this piece. When we actually check out the interior detail, that's where things get a little bit more fancy. The K is pretty simple right here, the A is also pretty simple, the R is pretty simple, and the E is extremely simple. The only letter structure that's really detailed without any extensions or fill-in is the S, which is heavily letter distorted. He ends up making it work anyway, but notice he didn't have to add this amount of style to every single letter. The rest of his letters are pretty simplistic, and that's something a lot of new graffiti artists don't quite understand. You don't have to add in a crazy amount of style to every single letter. You can add it where it's necessary and that's it. If you do it right, you'll be able to still make the piece flow. But if your basics are a little bit finicky, then everything's gonna kind of crumble down on top of your piece, and you don't really want that. Now, because the S has a lot more style, it has a lot more detail. Because it has a lot more detail, it has a lot more weight. And as a result, he's gonna have to go ahead and counterbalance this at least a little bit. This is why we're seeing such a massive E here, in order to help counterbalance all the weight from the F. But there's something else, something more important that toys overlook, and that is they tend to sacrifice fundamentals for the sake of style. We can see, despite the fact that this has so much style added to it, this is still an S. We still get the basic structure of it right here. It's really easy to tell what that letter's supposed to be, despite the fact that all of this is extra. And that's something we can get a clear example of right here. This is extremely stylized. We've got letter distortions, we've got all this waviness going on that should be breaking letter structure, but it doesn't. This is a perfect example of somebody who understands the fundamentals, understands the importance of letter structure, and understands that you cannot lose the letter no matter how much style you want to add. The S is still very clear to see right there. The K, once again, despite having a lot of style, is extremely defined and legible. Same thing with the A that he's got going on right there. And the R, and of course his signature beautiful E. He was able to add a bunch of style without losing the letter. New Graffiti artists, a brand new toy to the game, would do the same exact piece, but there wouldn't be any letters in here. Their S would be heavily distorted and completely unreadable. The K wouldn't even exist. The A would be lost in extensions, 3D, drop shadow highlights, none of them done correctly. And the R and the E might not even flow with the rest of the letters. There's a famous saying from, I believe, Tracy168, you gotta lose the letter without losing the letter. And it's exactly the same thing every single professional artist in any domain tries to teach newer artists. The fundamentals have to be present in the piece of artwork. It doesn't matter how much style you're adding, it doesn't matter what kind of style you're trying to do. The fundamentals have to be there. So he's able to lose the letter without losing the letter. And I really think that's the perfect place to end off on. So if you guys want to go ahead and check out Scare, I got a link to him in the description down below. And if you want to learn more about graffiti, check out the best how to do graffiti tutorials right here on the top playlist or in the cards above. I got a bunch of ebooks I published that go over all the fundamentals. And if you want more graffiti content, we got that on the bottom playlist. I'll catch you guys back here next week. Thanks for watching.